We have a really interesting interview for you tonight on Evening Plus. Mason County Central School District is expanding its use of what's called Zero Eyes. Now, it's an AI-based gun detection software. Joining me virtually tonight here on Evening Plus is District Superintendent Jeff Mount. Jeff, thanks so much for being with us here tonight to talk about this really interesting topic. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so when I heard about this, I really wanted to dig a little bit more into it because I think this is something, you guys are familiar with it in Mason County, but it's not something we've heard about closer to the Grand Rapids area potentially. Let's just talk a little bit about what this software is in general, from your perspective, using it for the last couple of years. What does this do to keep your students and staff safe?
Well, it's just another layer of school security that we added back in 2023 as a result of actually go back originally. There was the Oxford shooting that we're all very familiar with in Michigan. And then right on the heels of that, it seemed the Michigan State University shooting. And it did prompt the legislature to put some funding behind school safety. So, 3 grants were received by every Michigan school, one being that there was actually an audit of every district's emergency operations plans and secure environment. Another one was we had to provide have a digital map of our district and our buildings that we could share with law enforcement and first responders. The third one was really an open-ended enhanced school safety grant. And when we received that, we were looking for something more than what we already had. And, we have a pretty robust emergency operations plan, school safety plans and such, single points of entry, all the check boxes that most districts do have. But we also had a school resource officer already at Mason County Central, that covered our campus. We're a small rural school in Western Michigan, but at the end of the day, we look a lot like a lot of schools. But I was looking for something more, and when the grant came out, I saw this Zero Eyes, which just caught my eye. No pun intended, but I saw it, and I saw AI, and AI in a way, especially a couple of years ago, kind of had a little bit of a fear factor in there. It's like, well, is this a reckless use of AI? But it's actually using your district's already camera system. We already had a robust camera system, and throughout our entire campus, and the AI uses that. But this was the part that really sold me, that it was something a little bit different than, because it's looking for illegally brandished or shown guns on campus, right? That would be pistols or anything or long firearms and such. So it's a firearms detection system. The AI is looking 24/7, 365. We already had a great camera system. What do we need more? Well, nobody can watch 100 cameras on campus 24/7, 365. The manpower behind that is just unrealistic. So the reality is the AI can look at that. But the real factor here that sold me on this and my board and my community was the human verification factor, right? So AI could see something that looks like a gun. It could be a toy gun, but it could be a real gun. The human verification at the Zero Eyes Operations Center with trained past military and or law enforcement folks that have a trained eye using this the military grade technology to identify a weapon in a school was remarkable. That they will see that picture, verify it, and determine what level of emergency exists. So that was huge for us, was that human verification piece here at Mason County Central. But we really did it because we added another layer using those funds from the state of Michigan from those 2023 grants.
Yeah, and it's, it's a process, a system that I think is something that many folks may not have heard about. I think you did an excellent job explaining it, but it's not something you're going to see when you walk into any of the schools in Mason County. It's already sort of looped into the security cameras that you have. Like you said, AI is watching all of the time, which is an incredible resource. And then if something's detected, that's where real humans get involved, and then that threat can be escalated to, help on the ground right there in Mason County if that's needed. You guys have had this for about 2 years now, and the new news of this story is that you've kind of expanded it further in the district. What's been the personal experience for you guys as far as using this? Of course, it's something, we hope we never have to really rely on or use, but what's been the experience you guys have had over the last 2 years as far as any detection?
Yeah, so fortunately, we haven't had any, serious incidents or events that have happened, but, kind of a funny one, but also it shows you a couple things that are working. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Zero Eyes Operations Center, the ZOC as they call it, called me. Yep, it did wake me out of a full REM sleep. I about hit my head on the ceiling, but, the question from the Zero Eyes Operations Center, that 24/7, but here's the human verification. It was, is there a training going on at your high school? Well, we have it's not an open door policy, but every one of our sheriff deputies and law enforcement in the area have access to our schools 24/7, 365, using a card swipe. But they also have permission to come and use our schools in the evening for trainings. And a sergeant had 4 new deputies that they just hired through the sheriff department into the schools for training. Well, I was not aware of it, but that's okay. We didn't have to be, except for now that we have Zero Eyes. It would have been nice to have had a heads up. Having said that, I got the call at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was alarming to me. I was still trying to wake up, and I asked to, send me the picture that alerted it. And sure enough, there were 4 deputy sheriffs coming in with their guns as if they were, seeking out an active shooter in the school. I called, the dispatch just to say, hey, this is I'm assuming, but I don't want to always assume, that this is a training going on. And so she actually got on the radio to the sergeant, and in the background, I could hear him say, "Oh no, Zero Eyes, I forgot about that. Tell Mr. Mount I'm so sorry." And it's okay. I was like, it's okay. Because that happened to be the morning of a board meeting that night. I shared the story for some humor, but also to show you that the cameras are working 24/7, 365. Zero Eyes Operations Center is working 24/7, 365. And so is our local law enforcement, training our new deputies and how to work through a school in an active shooter situation. So they're training. So all those things are really good things. And so that's an example of how it's worked. We've had some other things like, we had a corrections officer in for career day and brought in some props that they use for training. Well, one of those happens to be a blue gun, but that got picked up on the cameras. And in Zero Eyes Operations Center, those folks that are trained, they're also reading situational awareness, right? Like, nobody's running, nobody's doing anything like, oh my gosh, this is a really bad situation. They were people waving at the corrections officer who was a parent that everybody knew, and but they had to call and verify. So I was able to verify that, yep, that was in there for career day, and all was well here at Mason County Central. So it's really nice to have that human verification element, but I'm just going to add another layer that it brings that what sold me on it as well. So we're in rural Michigan, and while we can say we have a school resource officer, they'll never be in the right place at the right time. And time is of the essence, right? So that person, this district, this staff, these kids need the support from many first responders in an event like that. And this will actually provide that situational awareness for our first responders. That being that, hey, when the wolf comes to the door, we need to know where that wolf is. And so when first responders go, when a picture is taken and when that gun moves through the school, the next camera goes, the next camera goes. So we can literally trace where that person is, the bad guy is, where evil is, and tell first responders exactly where to go. The example of Michigan State University was there was so many calls coming in, 911 calls, they believed that there were multiple shooters. In this case, there was really only one in that case, and in Oxford too. And so you can really pinpoint exactly where the first responders need to be to take care of that situation. Because it could have started in what we call A Hall here at the high school, and it could be in C Hall, many feet away and such. Then that's where we need to send our first responders. So it's really a remarkable tool for, in the event something happens, we can actually save lives by buying time to do that. It's preventive if we can see that before a shot is ever fired, and then be in lockdown. And so I'm just going to add to what really sold me when I reached out to Zero Eyes and talked to Brian St. Bernard from Zero Eyes. He showed me a video, and I didn't know what I was watching, except for I could see a young man in a stairwell with a camera above him, readying a gun, one of those AR style guns. He was readying it and waiting for the end of the school bell to ring. That was the actual Parkland shooter readying himself to go out, because he knew when the bell was going to ring, the hallways were going to be full of kids and then potential victims. If they had Zero Eyes at that time, it wasn't developed at that time, but if they had it, they would have been calling 911. They would have had the school in lockdown before anything even happened. He would not have had the available targets in the hallway, because of how he was waiting for that end of day moment. And so it can be very timely and preventive, and prevent more or worse loss of life. So I was sold immediately at that time. The human verification piece was a very important thing for our board, myself too included. AI was, becoming the new two-letter thing that was hot out there, but also a little bit, will it work? But that human verification thing really, really sold myself, sold our board, and it was a good use of that money that we received from the state of Michigan.
I so appreciate you walking us through this so intricately, because again, I mean, I would like to think I know a lot about the technology that's out there, especially here in the state of Michigan, but I had not heard of this. And I think a lot of people haven't heard of this yet. So I so appreciate you walking us through this. And you guys have had it for a couple of years in the district. You're now sort of expanding upon, where it's available in the district. What's been the parent or even the student response to having it for a couple of years now? What sort of things or feedback have you heard, from parents, families on how this is, thankfully nothing bad has happened at this point besides those couple of trick incidents, but what's the response been?
It really, we don't have much response, because it's just working silently in the shadows, as you'd say, and so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind for a lot of our folks. When I share it at board meetings and some press releases and things, and share the stories, you get a chuckle, and you also get, especially in our stories, right? They've been, good ones, but it's working then. So that's more of a peace of mind thing. But another factor that really added some credibility to it when I took this to the board for hey, this is where we'd like to use the funding that we received, and it was that it's military grade technology. This program and this company was developed by special forces military level operation folks that are just incredible, and you can tell how well trained they are. Everybody in the Zero Eyes Operations Center is either past law enforcement or past military, and they're trained for dealing with those high stress moments. in the end, our parents and our kids, it's just, again, working in such a quiet thing, except for they know that we add another layer of security, you know, onto our program and our overall emergency operations plans. They know that only with the splash of a headline. But, you know, fortunately, I want to keep out of the headlines for any other reason, you know, that's
Yeah.
bad.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, we've had our own fair of situations here in the state of Michigan, as you mentioned, and many of us very familiar with what just happened in Minnesota at the start of the school year. As far as any educators here in Michigan or students or families who are watching this interview who maybe are interested in this being incorporated into their district, I know you really talked about all of the things that you're so pleased with about this. What would just your final push to them, you know, to at least look into this technology be from your point of view?
You know, it's there's no single program that will prevent and stop all school shootings. And, you know, and Zero Eyes can't say the same thing either. But they can help save lives really by the time, you know. And so and I'll just say there, law enforcement will not be in the right place at the right time. The bad guys know where law enforcement are. So you've got to buy time, you know, and, you know, we have a boot system here at, you know, that locks down every one of our doors. Every one of our kids knows how to use it and implement that. We can have them barricaded in a short period of time, but if we can get them in that safe lockdown mode in a quick fashion, this is a way to do it with Zero Eyes. As soon as a gun is brandished illegally on school grounds, we know about it and we can be in lockdown as quickly as possible. Time is of the essence, and I don't care where you are. You know, during the craziness of a gunshot going off somewhere in a school, people still will react in a way that, no, that was a locker getting slammed or something. You know, in this case, we'll already be screaming lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. And it's just the time that we can do that and the situational awareness of having past military and law enforcement on the other end, directing our first responders exactly where to go and how to knock down this situation is it's priceless to me, you know. And I know we all got to live within a budget. It's tight at times and stuff, but you know, it's money well spent, in my opinion.
Definitely. Jeff, I so appreciate you talking about this. Of course, it's at top of mind for so many parents across the country, especially here in Michigan. So thank you so much for walking us through this. And I know you also spoke with our reporter, Nick Nelson. So he's going to be putting together a full story for us tonight at 11 o'clock, also speaking with staff from Zero Eyes so that families can really get an even closer look at this technology that you guys have in Mason County. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and your time with us. And I hope the school year is nothing but fun and educational and safe. Thanks so much, Jeff.
You're very welcome.